just lengthen a little bit the distance between, or the time that a bus would be coming. Maybe start a little bit later in the morning, or end a little bit later at night. And although those may be considered small in some regards, to the people that are relying upon that service, that is serious reductions. Secondly, we cannot get to 5% reduction without having more serious reductions, where we're really talking about if there is 7-day-a-week service, looking at whether or not we can, in fact, really look at reductions on maybe that Sunday service, not beginning as frequent until 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings, rather than beginning at 6 or so a.m. as they currently are. It also means, however, that we have to seriously look at whether or not in some lines that are not performing very well, where there are alternatives, should we even be running Sunday service or Saturday service? And in some extreme cases, are there lines that are not performing well enough where there is additional coverage and we shouldn't be running the line at all? Those are elements that we will be taking out for in kind of a broad cut look over the next several weeks. That will have a series of different reductions that will be discussed. By statute, any change that is greater than 25%, and we consider that to be per day on any line, actually requires a public hearing. We expect that there will be then public hearings, and ultimately any changes are something that you, as the Board of Directors, must adopt by an ordinance, first and second readings. Those changes, and whatever will in fact be ultimately recommended, are things that will in fact come to you probably in that April, May, June period. Lastly, let me just stress as strongly as I can, whatever reductions we see are, from our standpoint, reductions necessitated only because of the nature of the fiscal crisis that the country's facing, state's facing, we're facing. And that our goal would be, as soon as, and assuming that they come back, and when revenues return, to restore that service. This isn't service we think ought not to be there. It is service that we have no choice but to be able to address. And again, for you, this is not, even though service represents well over 80% of our budget, the cuts that I have ordered are across-the-board cuts that affect every place from payroll to our legal area or any place else in the agency. No place is sacrosanct in these reductions. So with that, I will stop. Open up to any questions, but I just want to be able to give you both the nature of the economy, the dire nature of it relative to TriMet in terms of our revenue, and the steps we are taking to be able to address that, recognizing that stimulus will help us in some regards, but specifically by some of their prohibitions. It isn't something that gets to get replaced against that operating. We are able to be creative in some spots to help offset some of those reductions, but not dollar for dollar.
Questions, gentlemen?
Yeah. Yeah, Fred, the budget, the final budget for which we'll be approving and discussing will contain the 5% across the board reduction.
Yes.
And is the 3% contingency budget, if you want to use that word in conjunction with it, is that part of it, or is that just hip pocket stuff that you sort of keep outside of the budget just in case you have to go back again and make some adjustments?
It's probably a little bit between the two of those. That is, it will not be, at this stage, not a formal part of the FY10 budget. But a number of us look at the employment levels within the region and say that even a slight growth in the payroll tax is probably optimistic. The additional 3% essentially would be about, I mean, there's so many moving parts in this, but roughly a absolutely flat payroll tax to us, and that means a higher unemployment rate than today's numbers. Exactly how much, because it so much affects where it is, but it is I mean, I think all of us can say, you can see an actual overall reduction in payroll and payroll taxes because of the employment picture in this region. And some economists would say it's going to get worse yet. So we're using that, recognizing that the picture may worsen from where we are seeing.
Lynn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Fred, tough times make tough decisions. We know it well. I mean, every day I've got to go to a company, or they're either closing or laying off people. And I got to tell you, if we're relying on 55% out of the payroll tax, we got problems that are still coming at us. And who knows what the answer, but unfortunately, the bus service, the MAX service hits those that can afford it the least to get loss of service. These are people that can't probably buy cars or don't drive cars or for whatever reason. And it just hits me, and I know it does all of us, that loss of service is not a good thing for the community as a whole. And if we can somehow maybe be innovative or something to make sure we're still providing that service, because those people that do have to get to work, we still want those payroll taxes from them that are working. But we know it. We're hitting it every day. And Fred, my barometer from the Teamsters Union is I have a freight local that they haul the freight. These are the people that are hauling the goods and services to just about every manufacturer and companies in the metro area. We're getting layoffs. We hardly ever get layoffs in our freight locals. Now we got layoffs. That's just a bad sign. And I don't mean to be so pessimistic, but it's there. It's a real issue, and we don't see the upturn yet. That's unfortunate. So.
But your points are very well taken. We do believe that our service is essential service to be able to make sure people who have jobs or are able to look for jobs have ways to be able to get to those things. And that's why whenever we're looking at whatever area of service is, can we still provide some ways that people can accomplish that trip, because we think that's so important. Now, it may not be as convenient, it may not come as often. Instead of every 15 minutes, maybe it's every half hour at times. They're going to have to plan their trips differently. But we're wanting to look at that. Also looking very closely at any places where we're actually would be talking about eliminating. Are there options so that somebody might walk a little bit further but still be able to get service? We think that's very important as well. But these are ugly decisions that we have to be made.
Thank you. Okay. Bob?
I just have one, Fred. I know how tough this is, but I can say from personal experience, because my wife works for UPS, and what they have done to try and eliminate some of this stress and some of this pain that the company is feeling. How have you talked with the unions to see if there's any help that can come from the negotiated contract? Have you looked at freezing, matching as far as the 401ks and things of this nature, if we are doing that, and things of that nature as well, which which stop you from quote unquote laying off people just by making freezes and things of this nature for future funds.
We have had some discussions around some specific issues. Steve outlined a little bit about that relative to, for example, how can we really make the existing workforce accomplish more of what we really need for that, in that case, on the ticket vending machine. We have not had that broader discussion about are there ways to be able to freeze any cost of living increase or other sorts of things. Those are, as you know, because you've been on the other side of the table, and that as Lynn as well, those are pretty tough discussions in the middle of an existing contract. What we have done is literally we are taking no new employees in, and we're expecting that even as we look at the service reductions, as I've outlined to you, inevitably in a large organization there's a certain amount of natural attrition that occurs. We are hoping that we can right-size the workforce against that with natural attrition.